Well, hello, welcome back. It's Center Court. We're focusing on executive MBA programs, and we have two alums from two great executive MBAs from at Brown University, the I.E. Brown Partnership Program, and representing that school as a graduate whose name is Janae Duane. Janae has her own company, and it's an advisory firm for the C-suite that deals mainly with multinationals. She's also a research fellow at Brown University, as well as a research fellow at MIT. And from the University of Texas in Austin, the McCombs School of Business, we have a graduate who just got out in May, got her degree in May after completing the program, and that is Emmy Fitzgerald Look. And she is a senior director at Saatchi & Saatchi Company, which is, of course, the well-known advertising and branding company, and global at that. Welcome. So let's get into why you decided to get in an executive MBA program in the first place. And then secondly, what led you to the school that you actually went to get it? Janae, let's start with you.
It's such a great it's such a great question, John, because our paths are never linear, and we never set out to, take on this endeavor, if you will, or at least I didn't. So I was looking for a home for my PhD for quite some time. And it wasn't until my husband actually went through the IE Brown Executive MBA where I actually saw that this was really a potential opportunity for me to explore a little bit more of what I wanted to do my PhD on. So I had historically come from a fine arts background. So I used to be an opera singer before I became an entrepreneur. And a large part of what I was really seeking and grappling with was really, what is this research that I'm interested in? But then also, what does that look like in our current world and within this context? And so I found the IE Brown program and fell in love with it through my husband's eyes in many ways. And my first real experience was they have an immersive program within Cape Town, and I went on the trip with him, and I met the faculty, I met the current students at the time, and I became an unofficial member of that cohort. And I just knew then that I had to go through the program myself.
Oh, that's great. And that makes you a pretty unusual student, I would think, given your background and the fact that both you and your husband have done this.
And I ended up giving birth to our son a month into the program. So
wow.
A lot of fun stories.
Wow. Oh. Emmy, how about you? Why did you choose to get an EMBA?
I honestly had been thinking about getting an MBA for, I would say, 5 to 10 years. My undergrad is also from the University of Texas, but in journalism. So I worked as an on-air reporter for a few years out of college, and then switched over to agency side in 2008. Not a tumultuous time at all, and saw the media landscape change significantly, over the course of the next 10 to 15 years. And I was definitely a subject matter expert in branding, messaging, marketing, advertising. I managed the budgets, looked at analytics for our teams, but I knew the skills that I have could position me well for future growth. And but I was lacking. I was lacking in the language of business as far as finance, accounting, organizational behavior in a lot of ways. And so I was set out to look for an MBA itself. Well, then why executive MBA? It's so funny, Janae, you talk about your husband's connections. Well, my husband did not go through the executive MBA program, but one of his very best friends is an accounting professor in our program. He was my professor, did not take it easy on me at all. But from listening to him, hearing his experience as a faculty member, he said, you might consider the Executive MBA program. We live in Dallas-Fort Worth. There is a Dallas Working Professionals program. But he said, where you are in your career, I could see the cohort really benefiting you if you could go down to Austin. And right around that same time, they'd switched the Executive MBA from twice a month to once a month, which made from a work-life, everything balance a lot more doable. And I'm so thankful that I did. I already have one degree from UT, so the bias is admittedly there, but McCombs School of Business, especially for the area of the country where I live, I was not able to really fly on a plane. We had some students who flew from out of state to come, but that was really the preeminent business school for me to attend. So I'm really grateful that it worked out in that way. And also, I gave birth to our first child, but 1 month into the second year of the program. So a little bit later than you did, Janae, but I think that's so interesting. I guess they knew what they were doing of, finding very different in our work life, but, similar life experiences. That's really neat.
I love it.
We're making a connection here between executive MBA programs and fertility.
Right.
So, Janie, could you describe what it was like? What was the learning experience like? How did you cope with it, given your other responsibilities in life?
So what I love about this program in particular is the fact that you have two very different schools that together complement each other extremely well. So you have IE that really in many ways, I would say, is at the cutting edge of really training executives for the future and what that looks like and what to start to be prepared for. Like, how do you start to critically think when we're thinking about how crazy and tumultuous this world is, and how do you grapple with some of the challenges that are just going to, in some ways, get increasingly more difficult as time goes on. And then you have on the Brown side, you very much have this well-rounded liberal arts education that makes you think very deeply about the roots of a lot of these topics.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where, in many ways, and we can take entrepreneurship as an example, where you may take it for granted that you may be an entrepreneur, or you've started companies or been a part of startups before, but really at the core, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur culturally, as we're looking at entrepreneurship in New England? What are some of the Puritan roots in which are sort of instilled culturally within this part of the country? What does that mean for you if you live here versus if you live somewhere else within the world? And so what I love is that it was sort of this mix of everything that we need as leaders, of taking the well-rounded perspective of some of these topics, along with thinking from a future-focused perspective. What am I going to need? How do I start to shift my mindset and almost shed some of the heuristics that I may have as a leader, and really allow myself to come with an open mindset as I'm approaching this brave new world, if you will. Yeah.
Amy, how would you describe your learning experience?
Our experience was new for our cohort. So I was class of 2023, and in 2021 is when they unveiled this new once-a-month offering. But in addition to that, it was a complete revamp and restructure of the program. And I think it really showed that they listen quite a bit to feedback they received, competitive analysis from around the country. But it was a really nice balance between the language of business, things like finance, accounting. I mean, I have a journalism undergraduate degree, and I took finance and accounting at the same time in the first semester, right off the bat. Next semester is valuation. And I mean, that's just, no joke. but it is also the analytical element from that perspective, but it was also balanced with organizational behavioral classes. We had a leadership seminar that was really challenging everyone in their own comfort zone, and also in the ways to understand that everyone has something that they can give, but everyone always has something to learn. And I think sometimes that's the difficulty in an executive MBA program, especially because everyone in the room is coming in with a very illustrious background, and at that point of their career being in there, and it's very easy to be intimidated. But the way that they structured a lot of the discussions and some of the seminars really allowed people to show more vulnerability and showcase ways that, okay, we can help each other. So rather than a much more competitive environment that you might see of some graduate programs, it was very much more collaborative of everyone trying to help each other. But aside from that, we also were the first class to introduce domestic immersions every semester. So starting in first semester, we went to New York City, and that was a really unique experience. Went to Washington, D.C., came up to Dallas. Didn't have to travel far for me, being from the DFW area, but there are a lot of companies that are headquartered here, and it fit into the curriculum. And then, of course, we had an international immersion in Copenhagen, and the international immersion is something that had happened, but the domestic immersion was a nice way to be a cohort that only sees each other once a month, but now you have some additional shared experiences in some unique settings. You see your professors in unique settings. We went on interesting food tours in the East Village, learning about different immigrant communities, and obviously the food is great too. So I think it was just a nice, well-rounded learning experience, and even more than what I could have hoped for coming into it.
Yeah. Janae, let's talk a little bit about work-life balance. I think there are a lot of people who think they would love to do an executive MBA program, but then, they have a demanding professional career, they have family responsibilities, and they're saying, how in the world can I layer on top of all this an academic program that is incidentally not an easy lift, but is a fairly rigorous, serious program? How did you do it and have a baby to boot?
Well, I would say that if you're going to do a program like this, really having buy-in of your partner and or whatever your family unit looks like is extremely important, because you're not the only person who's going to go through this program. Mm-hmm. So, much like I felt like I went through it twice, my husband also felt like he went through it twice. And so having that support allows you to have a bit of that balance. Also, what I really love about some of what Emmy's already shared is, you have executives, and I think this is just so unique to an executive MBA. You have executives who are coming in with experience, but are also coming in knowing that they all have to juggle that balance together. And so how do you really just open up lines of communication and allow yourself to be vulnerable and say, hey, let's set up a structure that works for us as a team. And then what we can do is an outline from a deliverable perspective. So, you might be much better at, say, supply chain versus, cost accounting versus corporate strategy or globalization in the arts. So really understanding, all right, who's going to take the lead? How do I then make sure that within the workload that I have for this curriculum, that I have everything that I need as far as how much I can invest, because everyone's investment is different, and you can see it also in how they contribute, how they interact. But being able to understand and outline that for yourself, and then bringing that to your family unit, saying, this is how I'm looking to show up or be present within this program. What are ways in which we can structure even home life so that we all can have a bit of that balance. And so I find that when you have that type of communication, not only at home, but then also within your teams, I mean, it just makes a world of a difference, and it allows it to be, though at times stressful, particularly when you do have immersions, right? Like, it's one thing to be in person. Well, if you're in person and you're in class for, for 8-10 hours, depending on activities, and then trying to figure out what's going on at home or going on at work, like, you almost have to upshift and downshift as if you're driving a car, and really just identify, what does that look like for you? And only you know how you will do it. But if you have the intention to do it, you'll find a way.
Emmy, how did you manage it?
Yeah, I think first, there's no perfect time to go to business school. So, we all have the same amount of hours. They say even Beyonce has 24 hours in a day. So it is all about how we manage that time. And I had a similar conversation with my husband on household responsibilities and what time commitment. There were Saturdays where we had asynchronous sessions that were outside of our in-person, and so that really shifted some social plans that we may have had. But I tried to fully be present wherever I was and time block from that perspective. And that also includes buy-in from my team at work as well.
Right.
Our company had recently unveiled an unlimited PTO policy. And so I said, okay, well, this is your policy. And I put 2 years of calendar holds and out of office, right at the outset, as soon as they approved my participation. But it took a lot from my team members as well. There were times where I am in 2 4-hour class blocks on a Thursday, or traveling. There might be an event. We do a lot of events and advertising. But what I found was, from a work perspective, that gave other people on the team the opportunity to step up and lead. And frankly, it should have been things that were probably delegated to them anyway. So, and which is, that's another very important tenets that they teach you in the different management classes as well. So I think that balance from my buy-in from my coworkers, also from my partner, and to Janae's point, yes, we had children over the course, but so everyone had something. They're either dealing with their own disability, or they have work, they have children. They have to go to the United Arab Emirates, in the 1 week in between, or taking finals and things like that. And it is just an ebb and flow. And I heard like Brene Brown say one time, this is about a marriage, but I think it works well for the study cohort, that you say it should be 50-50, and that's not necessarily the case. It's 100% in the end, but someone might be 20 here, someone might be 80 there, and it might be in certain areas here, certain areas there. And that's certainly the case for us in our group projects. Yes, I guess it could be elements like undergrad where someone doesn't pull their weight, but everyone was there voluntarily, so that very rarely happened. And if it was, there was probably something very significant happening outside of the classroom that they were dealing with. And you never know when you're going to be the one that needs to have that grace as well. And so developed some very strong friendship and relationships, with the various folks in the cohort as a result.
One of the great benefits of pursuing an MBA on a part-time basis, an executive basis, is that you can actually apply what you learn since you're working. And I wonder if you can think of an example of that, Emmy, where you learned something in the classroom and you immediately were able to make use of it at work.
Yes. So there were many, many instances of that. One I kind of referenced earlier was the organizational behavior. One of the first classes he said was, get the monkey off of your back. Do not touch the task. And that kind of became a mantra for folks, and something that I really tried to hone in on. But then also, I would say the learning approach. Again, as somebody who had a journalism degree and really diving into finance and valuation and accounting, I noticed in the first probably semester and a half, I would look at something and say, I have no idea how to do that. I don't know how to do that, and kind of dismiss it. Well, that's not going to work. That is not an effective coping strategy. And I found okay, that's my tendency. Let's take a deep breath and let's dissect these parts of the problem. And sure enough, there's at least an element to get 80% there, 90% there. I had to let go of a lot of perfectionism, and which is also, I think, something valuable to learn as a person. But just that approach in my work as well, when there are challenging situations from a reorganizational perspective, or working on a project, we're kind of overhauling our communications goals and measurement and all of these things. It's like, gosh, how could we ever do that? But let's dissect it and see where we can get there. And I don't think I would have gone out of my comfort zone enough, honestly, in my current job to have those skills. But now that's taken me even further to be assigned the more difficult projects, the ones people are like, we don't really know how to do it, but we're going to give it to you. Like, that's happened 2 or 3 times now. And I haven't figured it out, but I think it's because I have better skills in how to dissect that process through.
You got to love that. Janie, how about you? Did you have instances where you were able to come back home and in your own business or as a senior fellow employ what you learned?
Yeah, I mean, there's many of them actually. So I think about some of the work that we do through my company. So we advise C-suite, but then we also do future forecasting, and we really look at future trends, and then how do we start to deploy some of that. What I really loved about, say, both my corporate strategy class, as well as we ended up having, while we were in Madrid, we would end up having these day-long, like, one-off intensive master classes around strategy and global markets and future trends. And what I love is that there were pieces from each of these that I was like, oh, I've been looking at helping, say, this, this tech company through this lens specifically because of the background of the CEO and then the senior leadership team. Really, in many ways, as we're thinking about culturally where they are themselves, but then also the new emerging markets that they're looking to head into, we need to start thinking from a scenario perspective, what are some ways in which they can utilize their own cultural backgrounds and bring that to some of their future thinking. So that was a really nice way for me to go, oh, I could take a piece here, I could take a piece here, and really incorporate it immediately into that work. And then from a research perspective, what I love is, coming from practice, coming from the world of business, you're coming almost into this academic world with a completely different perspective. Yeah. And in many ways, it allowed me to go, oh, if I'm going to do research, which the MBA was very much a catalyst for that, I have a whole different set of eyes and approach to this than those who have been traditionally within academia and have just been heading down that route their entire time.
Yeah. Now, Jenny, give me 3 things about your learning journey that you will long remember that really had an impact on you.
Well, I will say first, the I.E. Brown faculty and community, and that includes staff, have been before I was even in the program, while I was in the program, and even afterwards, have all been amazing. Like, they are people who care about people. And you're not just a number, you're not just a person who's going through a class. Like, they genuinely care about who you are, who your family is, and how do you get the most out of that. And to me, that's what I want every organization to be. That's what I want every program to be. The other thing that I would say, or the next thing I would say is, we very much come to the table with our own set of biases that anchor our perspective. And the program that I went through has really allowed me to take a step back and say, wait a minute, are you coming to this with a fresh set of eyes? What can you leave at the door so that you can seek to understand a different perspective that maybe you might not be considering, or you can't even fathom of right now? And then the third thing I would say is, we as executives come on in thinking that we have answers, because we're expected to have answers. And what I love, and what I've grown to love even more, are the questions. And so I try to hang on to those questions and find more interesting questions as often as possible.
I mean, what are your three big things?
I think that kind of piggybacking a little bit on questions, we took a financial statement analysis course, and the tagline for the course is math good, read good. And it's kind of tongue in cheek to be so basic, but the whole premise is you can learn a lot about what is happening with a company or an investment opportunity based on what is in their 10K, what's in their filings, read the footnotes that nobody reads. What are some news articles that came out around the time of an IPO that really, can share a lot about what was happening there. And aside from the just literally learning how to read these financial statements in a more thorough way, I think that premise of usually what you're looking for is right in front of your face, but are you asking the right questions, or are you listening enough to be able to get that? I think the second is I took a new venture course, and really, really enjoyed it. I haven't, started my own company yet, but it was a new professor, not a new course. And I think going through the pitch deck process and how to kind of plant questions that somebody might ask in the end. A lot of what I do is selling in ideas and concepts and something new and different that we're asking the client to do. It is a lot of selling, and so I hope to use the pitching deck process, in a literal sense, sometime in the future. But in a nearer term, I think there were a lot of things on brevity and tailoring the message to your audience that I think is really useful. And then our valuation class as well, I learned a lot from the calculation standpoint, and already in just some financial conversations, I understand what's going on a lot more. But it's even something so basic, like we see comps all the time, and I sort of took for granted, I think some of the relative products, or companies that might be listed, but just some of the analytical framework, I would say, that the professor provided was really useful. And in fact, I got in a car accident during that course, and I was fine, but it was very scary, and was able to negotiate with the insurance company to be made fully whole through this ridiculous process, pulling a lot from the valuation and kind of what we were learning at that point.
Huh. I wonder, Janae, what surprised you most about going back to business school?
I mean, John, I had many surprises. I'm not going to lie to you.
Even though your spouse had done this before you.
Well, it's one thing to have, someone to go through it and say, hey, it's okay. You can do this. But it's another thing to go through that yourself. I would say that before before the EMBA, I was not good at reading financial statements. And finance in particular was just not a strong suit. I would say that, statistics was not a strong suit. And so much of my life now on a day-to-day revolves around, reading financial reports, data, stats. I mean, it's my day-to-day now. So
Yeah.
it's just funny. My husband and I actually laughed about this last night. So I love this question, because if you asked me 10 years ago, I'd say there'd be no way I'd be where I am today. And I'm here because of that IE Brown program. So that is the biggest thing. And I think that alone is
Yes.
enough as far as surprises.
So instead of singing notes, you're going through numbers.
That's right. That's right.
Emmy, the biggest surprise for you on your learning journey?
I think that I learned early on, they say in a lot of the courses and the seminars that you might know your numbers backwards and forwards, and be the smartest subject matter expert. But if you don't have the soft skills, if you can't get along with people, if you can't communicate, then you're going to limit your career. And as far as a branding marketing perspective, I still learned a lot from my marketing courses, but I do have a lot of expertise in that area. However, I have very strong all of those soft skills that they were sharing kind of as a warning, maybe to the engineers and other folks, and I'm using very broad strokes, generalized statements. I had those. So I sat there at first thinking, gosh, okay, I'm glad they admitted me. Yes, I had the good grades, I have my career, but I feel a little bit inferior to, wait a minute, I have these elements that a lot of these other folks have said they are so desperately lacking and have so much difficulty doing. Well, then what can I do to really lean into my strengths then and take this opportunity? Yes, I'm going to learn accounting and finance and statistics and economics, globalization, things like that. But how can I really magnify what I am good at, because that is what separates me from the rest, and I can carve out the opportunities that are right for me with things that I have that I can just improve upon and grow and strengthen throughout the process.
Yeah, that's a really good point. What advice would you give to others who, like you a few years ago, were in consideration phase for an EMBA? What should they be doing? What should they be thinking about? Emmy?
I would say that if you were thinking about it, it does not hurt to reach out, attend webinars like this. Also with, with schools that you might have your eyes on. I also found that previous students were very willing to speak with me about their experience as well. And through listening to their experience and, talking with my husband, we thought, okay, if I can get in, we can make this work. But it was reassuring to hear that from others. So don't be afraid. Don't let what is on the website that you see about the admissions process intimidate you. There are real people behind this. And that particular program might not be the right program, but in a country like the United States, there are so many different types of ways that someone can learn. One person a month for me was absolutely essential, and I loved it. But there might be something else, but you won't know unless you talk to someone. At least just start it. Don't be so afraid that you don't talk. Just send the email.
Janae, your advice?
So I love everything, Emmy, that you said. What I would add to that is really dig deep and know what you want out of a program. So for me, I very much wanted a global perspective on what it means to be in business and to do business. And what I found in talking to alums that I got to meet, particularly through my husband's cohort, is that the IE Brown program was for me. And, for many reasons, but that global perspective in particular. And it changed my life, but I'm not alone. I know that it's changed others. So really digging deep to know what it is that you're looking for will then help you to then start to explore some of these programs. And then from there, start to cherry pick, all right, what are they like from a cultural perspective? Who should I be talking to? How do I start to reach out? And then just do it.
Just do it. Exactly. So, Janae, I got to ask you this.
Okay.
Did you ever play Elvira in Don Giovanni or Mimi in La Boheme?
Oh no. So they're both sopranos. So I am the Carmen.
Oh,
I'm a mezzo soprano.
there you go. How about that? Do you miss it?
I do, but I do and I don't. What I miss is the artist, the artistic piece of it. But what I love is that my research is actually starting to incorporate some of that opera now. So, I'm excited to blend my past with my present and future.
All right. Well, let me thank Emmy and Janae for their time and their thoughts. I think we added a lot to the discussion here on what you can expect if you go into an executive MBA program. Again, we've been speaking with Janae Duane, who completed the IE Brown University Executive MBA, a pretty unique partnership between the business school in Madrid and, of course, the Ivy League school in Providence, Rhode Island. And we've been speaking to, of course, Emmy Fitzgerald Look, who graduated from the UT Austin McCombs School of Business with her executive MBA. And like me, well, actually, not like me, I always wish I took an MBA. Yes, I've been a journalist all my life. Emmy started as a journalist. She did the smart thing and got out. I'm still in it.
At least you found good topics and conversations to have. Local news got to be a little bit of I'm too much of an empath, I think, for local news based on everything that happens all day. So I think you were smart in finding more uplifting subject matter to cover well.
Instead of crime, local
Right.
crime. Oh God, yes. Or the whole polarization in politics and the fights that are going on in education and everything else. That's for another day. Emmy, Jamie, thank you so much for participating. Really appreciated it. And it was lovely to meet the two of you.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.